how do you making sure your business is predictable? That is literally the $1 million question, right? So in today's video, I'm going to share with you what we do for our Done For You sales clients that are reaching like multi 6 figures, 7 figures in their business. What do we actually do and how we do things over here in Daily Surprises Media as well. And more specifically, we're going to dive into 3 things. So number 1, why attraction marketing alone it's not going to make your business predictable. And number 2, how do you add predictability into your business? What do you need to focus on? And number 3, the one thing you actually need to focus on, you can do this week, this month, in order to get more predictable sales for this month and coming months. So if that's something you're interested in, then make sure you keep watching. Before I actually dive into all this like specific juicy point, I want to share a little bit of my journey so you kind of get where I'm going with this. So when we first started in this agency, we're actually not really doing kind of DM sales. So right now in my agency, we actually have 2 Done For You packages. One is just lead generation, engagement, and one is kind of DM sales, lead conversion. The reason why I have those as separate packages now in my agency is because I had that confusion in the beginning of my business, right? So for the longest time in my agency, we're only doing lead generation. So we're only doing kind of engagement, lead generation side of things. So that is actually already a big change compared to how I was doing in the beginning of my business, which is I feel like I'm just shouting from the rooftop about my offer, what we do. I feel like I'm giving so much value, but then no one actually knows about me, right? Mainly because it's not just about creating content, but also standing in front of the right traffic so that the right people are actually consuming content so they can actually convert, right? So that is why step number 1 really worked well for me is when we start introducing engagement, lead gen, is so that our converting content is getting in front of the right people. So a lot of people actually call that attraction marketing as well. It's basically when you have converting content and a lot of people consume it over time, they convert. It's almost I wouldn't necessarily call like a passive way of selling, mainly because you do need to, put out consistent content out there. So people are consuming new content and getting them closer to that decision point to buy your offer, right? But it is one of those things that is like becoming really popular in the space, and everybody talk about how attraction marketing alone, like is a better way of selling. I don't necessarily believe that, and I'll talk to you why about it. So when I first only had kind of lead gen and engagement side of the things in my business, I definitely see a kind of like more sales are coming in, but also I have these months, some of them are really high, some of them are really low. Sometimes we have referral coming, which is obviously amazing because a lot of them don't even need a sales call, they just convert straight away. Well, all of that is really good, right? I feel like I'm a little bit more in control in that sense because I'm getting content out there, people are seeing it. The numbers are just doesn't feel very kind of consistent. So when I was having kind of lead gen and engagement done in my business, done right as well, like what I see is I have consistent follower growth, I have consistent impressions and reach on my posts. Obviously every now and then I would have a viral one, but most of the part my business, like that kind of numbers feel very predictable. But when it comes to actual new clients, new sales, that's where things feel a little bit off. Like the number there doesn't feel consistent. So that's when I start working, like looking into like how can we actually change this to make the whole process predictable. And around that time, I actually had an engagement client asking if we can support her with Done For You sales, like sending the DMs for her basically. And that is when the first time I actually had a sneak peek into a very successful business to see what they're doing in their backend in order to bring consistent sales and client into their business. And that's when I realized, okay, you actually need both pieces. So you do need attraction marketing, but you also need active selling to really have that sustainable, predictable business, especially if you're selling high ticket. I think it can be quite overwhelming, right? It can be really overwhelming that because you don't really need many clients in order to hit that like 10K, 20K. I know that number is very large for some people, like 100K, kind of like revenue and beyond. But obviously when you're selling high ticket, one client finish their contract or say one client leaving, that can have such a big impact on your business, mainly because each client is quite a high percentage proportion wise in your revenue, right? So if you have one client that's finishing the contract, not renewing or something like that, it can be very stressful. obviously doing a really good job in terms of like delivering your service, but every now and then you're definitely gonna have clients kind of outgrow that service potentially, or just really want to try something new that is nothing that you can do to really keep them. And in that case, what you really want to do is to be able to actually bring in new clients to replace that spot, so you can, feel less stressed when clients leaving, because you always have a warm pipeline that you're ready to bring on. You can even create a wait list, so whenever you have a spot opening, you know already a person that's going to be a good fit for it, fitting into that slot. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about the first thing, why attraction marketing alone is not working. I already gave you my experience, so I think that kind of explains itself already. But I want to kind of step backwards and let's talk about like strategy side, why it's not working, right? So attraction marketing, we already talked about it. It's basically by putting out converting content over time, and then people just consume the content and then they convert. I know a lot of people are thinking like attraction marketing is like a better way of selling, which I do not believe that's the case. Like, I definitely think you need to have a very strong foundation. You need to have really good copywriting. So attraction marketing for me is a non-negotiable part of your marketing, of your sales. But for me, by itself, it's not necessarily like a better way of selling, right? Mainly because algorithm obviously is changing all of the time, as it should be, right? Because they are testing how things work, how platform works, how people interact with your content. So if you are relying on algorithm 100% to putting your content in front of the right people that is going to consume, that's very likely to convert, you are not really in the driver's seat, right? So you are actually at the back seat, like hoping that the algorithm showing your content to the right people. And every time, let's say Instagram, as an example, they introduce a new format, like they're telling you, okay, now Reels is the thing. You go create a bunch of Reels, and then all of a sudden they change their mind. Okay, actually we push it too hard. We're going back to single image. And then you try to create single image again. And you just like constantly in that, like panic mode, like, I don't know what's the thing going to get algorithm in front of the right people. So you are relying on something that's really unpredictable for your sales. It's just not a very smart move, right? And the second thing is obviously attraction marketing is leveraging converting content. So it's your content need to be super strategic, right? Like as in, obviously we still want your content to be strategic regardless, but I think you just have so much more pressure in that way, right? Because you constantly relying on people converting through your content, and obviously you want your content to grow new eyeballs as well. And we all know, right? Like if you are in attraction marketing, you already know this, like attraction content, like attract new people kind of content, it's not necessarily the same as that content actually converts. So you have like top of the funnel type of content, you also have the conversion type of content. Those are two different things. So you're having so much pressure for yourself when it comes to content creation. It's just not making the whole sales process or content creation process fun at all, right? So this is why it's very important for you to have something else apart from attraction marketing in order to make your business predictable. Which leads quite nicely into our second point. Okay, what do you need to do actually instead to make your sales predictable, to making sure that you can bring new clients whenever you need to, create sales on demand, create clients on demand. And manifestation is not the answer to that. Well, that is great. Okay, I'm not trying to like make jokes on it. Maybe a little bit, because I see people swing like too far each way. Sometimes people are like, clients flow to me, which is one of their mantras. And I used to do that, and I'm glad I'm off that plane now, which is great. So let's talk about what you actually need to put in place in order to create predictable sales in your business. A simple answer to that, well, I'm going to explain that later, is to create a predictable sales process. I know that's like the most unhelpful answer, but don't worry, I'm going to break it down. What does that actually look like? Basically, you would know if you have a predictable sales process if you know these two metrics really well. So number one is what is your conversion rate like, right? So conversion rate is basically, let's say if you touch like 100 people, regardless of like sales calls or DM conversations, or let's say even like doing ads, right? Get your ads in front of the right 100 people. How many people actually then convert at the back end, become a client? So know your conversion rate. But the other thing, which I don't think enough people are talking about this, is your conversion timeline. So if you are selling high ticket like me, like all of my clients, then most likely your conversion timeline is a bit longer compared to people who are selling like say lower ticket, right? So you probably see a lot of like ads out there normally get into a kind of lower ticket program. Mainly because to convert cold leads literally in kind of almost like one touch point, right? Having amazing sales letter, having amazing copywriting, and then get them into this $27, $47 program, it's much easier when you're selling low ticket. But when it comes to higher ticket, the conversion time generally a little bit longer, mainly because people are thinking longer in terms like, do I want to invest in this? Do I trust this person is gonna have the answer I need? Do I trust this program is gonna give me what I actually need in my business right now, right? So there's more warming up need to do. The reason why you need to know this is, let's say you have a 6 months group program, and you are maybe, let's say, do a really big live launch or like selling in the DMs all the time, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to deliver this. I need to create new modules, right? I may want to take my foot off the gas for a while. And to be quite honest, if you have recurring revenue set up, you don't necessarily need to have foot on gas, like in terms of like selling all the time, right? But you need to know when you need to get back to selling really actively again. It's because, let's say, if you know that in general, your audience take around 2 to 3 months to actually convert from the day that you start conversation, then you need to know, like, before your group program finish, like 2 to 3 months before that, that's when you want to go back to actively selling again, right? This is super important to know your number. If you actually know what your conversion rate is like, know what is your conversion timeline is like, then it's telling me that you already have a predictable sales process in place. And that's very important for you to rinse and repeat. And also you really want to, when it comes to conversion rate as well, just giving you a bonus point, you want to know the conversion rate in each step. Right. So what I mean by that is, let's say, using my business as an example, what I normally do is I have DM conversation, and then I pitch people on the call if they're a good fit. And obviously I prefer close people on the call, mainly because over here, especially when it comes to done for your clients, we do have a really high bar, and we actually do reject more application than we accept. So I do want to jump on the call to making sure every box is checked before we bring them onto a done for you side of things, or even for my strategy client, making sure they're a good fit. So obviously I want to track this, all the stages, right? So how many people I talk to can actually convert into a sales call, right? So some of them may ghosting me, some of them I chat to and was like, oh, I don't feel like they're a good fit. I'm not gonna even talk to them about the sales call. It does not make sense, right? So there's all these scenarios that I know, like if I talk to 50, what I consider to be ideal client, let's say I'm gonna generate 10 calls. And then I know, like, because obviously I'm gonna let those people know already, I'm gonna talk to them about whatever the offer is on the call. And I gave them idea of like pricing point. Obviously I know this is not for everybody. I know some of you don't really want to talk about price until on the call. Either way works, but for me in my business, I kind of like to give them idea before we jump on the call. So it's more like a fitting call, right? To making sure that they are the right fit. It's not like a huge surprise at the back of it. And then I jump on the call and my close rate would be really high, meaning because they are pretty much bought in. They just need to jump on the call to making sure that everything is what we chat about in the DMs. I'm who I say I am. Everything just feels right? So that's why, like, if I know my number from front to end, like from beginning to end, and let's say I introduce a new offer or introduce something else and I talk to 50 people, and now all of a sudden I can't even get one person on the call, then that's telling me, like, very, very likely it's either my new offer, people are not warmed up for it, I'm not talking about it enough in my content, or it's my audience is not warm enough. Obviously that wouldn't be the case, because if I'm selling all the other offers fine before, but not this one, it's most telling me something about the offer, right? So potentially something around the DM messaging as well that's not quite landing. So messaging is what I need to tweak. Again, when you know this number, it really, really easily telling you what part of your business is breaking down, right? So this is why having a predictable sales process is super important. So you have predictable sales, and also when things are not quite what you think they should be, you know where things are breaking down. So that also leads to very nicely to the last point. The one thing you can do to making sure that you're having predictable sales next month is knowing all of that conversion rate, and then you know your goal number, you work backwards, right? So let's go back to that conversion rate example. Let's say my goal next month is getting 2 new clients, making up this number. And I know I'm gonna put a very, very low number here just because it's easier for us to do a calculation, right? Let's say if I get somebody jump on the call closing rate is 50%, then I'll need 4 calls to be generated, right? And if I know it's a 10% conversion rate from DM to call, then I need to talk to 40 ideal client. And that's the action I know, right? That's the one thing I know, like no matter what happens this month, I can not necessarily drop everything, content, everything else still important, but I know that my main goal is to making sure that I hit 40 people. Obviously, I'm not having like witchy powers. I can't make people to convert into a client, but I know that with my conversion rate, it wouldn't like fluctuate that much, right? Like if my conversion rate all of a sudden go from like say 10% to 1%, I know something went wrong there. In general, that wouldn't fluctuate that much. And I know like if I want to guarantee I'm having 2 new clients next month, I will obviously increase the people that I touch a bit higher to making sure I have a guaranteed result, if that makes sense. So that's what we talk about today. Basically, what you like, why attraction marketing alone is not enough. How do you add predictability in your business? The one thing you can do to kind of bring in predictable sales next month, this month, you just need to work things backwards, right? But with all of that said, I think one really important thing to talk about is you still need very strong content in place, right? So attraction marketing is important at the end of the day. I'm not saying like when you do active DM selling, all of a sudden you can just throw everything else out of the window. To actually convert people, you do still need a very strong profile. You still need converting content. And that is actually the second step in my 4-step framework that all my clients use. I use to get client and sales on demand, right? And a big part of it is like really knowing like what kind of content that converts. So if let's just use a quick example. If right now your content is mainly like educational content, 2 steps to do this, 3 tips to do that, I can almost guess that your conversion rate is not really good right now, right? So if you want to learn how we actually do conversion well, then you can either comment or DM me the word framework and I will share with you the 60 minutes masterclass I have. I actually spend like more than 55 minutes really diving into each step about what do we do over here to generate content that converts, to generate sales, like all the steps need to really click in place to give you a machine that actually works, right? And specifically when it comes to content as well, I give you the content formula, I give you side-by-side comparison to show you almost like a client case study, how she went to from like nobody's reaching out in the DM, all of a sudden multiple DMs overnight, the exact copy I'm going to show you in that masterclass as well. So make sure that you either comment or DM me the word framework to access that. Hope you enjoyed today's training. I will see you in the next one. Bye.